If you think that you understand God, that's not God. There's this quiet confidence that most modern people carry. It usually goes unspoken, but it's there. It says, we don't know everything yet, but we will someday. Given enough time, enough data, enough computing power, eventually the universe will give up all of its secrets. The equations will close, the models will converge. Reality will finally sit still long enough for it to be understood. And to be fair, this confidence has earned its keep. Because human beings, we've done some cool things. We split the atom, we mapped the genome, we sent machines beyond the edges of the solar system. And now, maybe most intoxicatingly of all, we're building artificial intelligence that can simulate thought itself. It's very possible that one day we will understand how the universe behaves, when it began, what conditions made it emerge. But there is a question that keeps getting treated like a leftover detail when it is actually the whole problem. And that is, why is there anything at all? Not how this version of the universe happened instead of some other version. Not why the constants in the universe look the way they do or are the way they are, but why there is being rather than nothing. Why existence itself exists. Every object we know shares one overlooked fact. It did not have to exist. It came into being, it will last for a while, and it will pass out of being. And that is true of stars and squirrels, civilizations and computers, human minds and artificial ones. They are contingent. They borrow existence. They participate in being. They do not generate it. And participation is not explanation. You can stack explanations forever. This caused that, which caused this, which arose from prior conditions, but none of it explains why existence itself is here to be borrowed at all. This is the unsettling calm of St. Thomas Aquinas' contingency argument. If everything that exists is contingent, then at some point, nothing existed. And if at some point nothing existed, nothing could exist now, but something does exist. So contingency cannot be the whole story. There must be something that does not come into being, does not pass out of being, something whose essence is not having existence, but being existence. Not a thing among things, not a being competing with other beings, but being itself. Now, I know this is usually where people get uncomfortable because this starts to sound abstract, distant, academic, confusing even. And metaphysics feels optional, while everyday life feels urgent. But here's where the argument turns personal, because the reality that holds everything in being is not indifferent to us. God is not indifferent to us. We say God loves you so often that it barely registers anymore. But what it actually means is almost shocking. Here we are, placed inside of time, inside this life, inside a narrow window of existence we did not choose, and yet we can contemplate God. We can ask why anything exists at all. St. Augustine put it plainly, "You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you." That's not poetry, that's diagnosis. No animal can do this, no tree, no object in the universe. And the fact that we can means God has reached toward us by giving us minds capable of reaching back. To be able to contemplate God at all is already evidence of God's love. And there's more. The universe is not just there, it's actually intelligible. It can be understood. We didn't invent that, we discovered it. Reason works because reality itself is reasonable. And when we try to make God intelligible in the same way, graspable, usable, manageable, we repeat a very old mistake. In Genesis, the temptation is not ignorance, it's control. To take what is given and turn it into something possessed. Creating a God we can fully understand is not progress. It's just another version of grasping at the tree of good and evil. Another attempt to turn being itself into an object we can hold. This is where modern ideas of God quietly fail, not because they're hostile, but because they're manageable. God becomes a genie, a therapist, a moral mascot, or some sort of rival competing with human freedom. But the moment you wrap your head around God, you've already reduced him to a thing, something with edges, something you can control. something you could theoretically replace later on with something better. And whatever that is, it's not God. Because God is not an object inside the universe. God is the reason the universe exists at all, the author of the story. God doesn't compete with human intelligence any more than truth competes with thinking. Even a future intelligence that can understand every particle, every force, every causal chain would still not understand God the way people usually mean they understand God. It could describe everything contingent without ever touching the necessary reality that makes description possible. Rejecting God because science explains the universe is like rejecting language because you understand grammar. You haven't disproven God. You've misunderstood the claim, which leaves us with what may be the only real choice we ever make. Either we remain contemplators of being, receivers, participants, responders, or we collapse inward and try to become the source of our own existence. Modern culture calls this autonomy, and Christianity calls it exhaustion. Faith is not rewarded with information, it's rewarded with life, with clarity, with joy, with a peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. And that's what Christians mean when they mean something serious by the love of God. And that's why the right posture before God is not mastery, it's humility. Not, I get it, but silence. Because if you think you understand God, that's not God. What you've understood is a thing, and God is not a thing.